welcome to Diverse and Inclusive Leaders. This is a show where I speak with the most inspirational and thought-provoking leaders of today and unearth their unique stories of diversity and inclusion to help inspire, educate, and motivate others to make the world a better place. Today, I am delighted to be joined by Mariana Agathoklis Schlock. Mariana is the Chief Communications Executive for Verizon, a household name that all of us know. She serves the largest consumer customer base in the US with over 100 billion in total revenue. She has worked with organizations and brands such as MTV. Across the board, she's worked in consumer products, telecommunications, media, and even gaming industry. What Mariana loves is not only nurturing teams and building a high-performance culture that puts communications at the heart, but she's also incredibly passionate about being a working parent, being a proud Greek mother of two fabulous boys, and also the power of parenthood, fertility, and how organizations can really support their very best team players. Welcome to the show, Mariana.
Thank you so much for having me, Layla. I'm so happy to be here.
Before we dive deep into many a conversation around the power of intersectionality, parenthood, even fertility, I'd love you to tell us a little bit about how you came to be where you are today. Take us back to where it all started.
Well, it all started in Mississauga, Canada, with my parents, who were actually immigrants from the small island of Cyprus in the Mediterranean Sea. And when I was 1 year old, we immigrated here to the US. So for me, it started with a very heavy immigrant culture, very serious work ethic, and the ability to assimilate into different places as easily as possible. And as I grew up, I certainly had my identity as a Greek American, and that certainly felt like home for my parents. But then I started to explore and go beyond that. I found my way to Boston University's College of Communication, where I had an incredible experience under two fantastic deans, Dean Baker and Dr. Root, that really set the stage for a pretty phenomenal career thus far that has taken me in and out of multiple different industries. When I first graduated, I moved to Washington, D.C. I really, really wanted to try my hand at politics. I pretty quickly learned that politics was better left as a passion than a profession for me. So I made the move up to New York City, where I worked on some very large consumer product brands like Chapstick and the College Board, which any American student will tell you the SAT and the College Board is not necessarily their favorite thing, but that's okay. Got to work on Timberland and things of that nature. And then I found my way to MTV, where I started an amazing 13-year journey there that took me to the very, very early days of digital. We launched the first mobile series ever. Then took me into video gaming with household games like Rock Band and Dance Central, which was absolutely incredible, including getting to work with the likes of the Beatles, which is still a career-defining moment for me for sure. And then to more traditional media, if you will, working things like the Video Music Awards and the Movie Awards, some of the biggest shows, documentaries that were around at the time, as well as more corporate-oriented work, going heavily into research, into millennials and Gen Z. And at the end of my time there, I think a really natural transition for me was to Verizon, where at the time a gentleman by the name of Jim Gerace came to me and said, "We just bought AOL and Yahoo, and I know nothing about media." And I said, "Great, I know nothing about telecom, except that I'm a Verizon customer, and I think this 5G thing is very interesting." And he gave me the shot, and that's basically led to the last, nearly 8 years of my career, where I've gotten to get experience both back in media with a unit Verizon Media, which we have since sold, Verizon Business, where I went very deep in B2B communications, and then most recently coming to Verizon's consumer unit, which is one of the largest consumer populations in the country, and certainly provides quite an amazing platform to serve our customers and to do the work of communications.
Oh my goodness, Mariana, the thing that I love about you so much every time we speak is that you are so modest and humble about this journey. Like, you know, do you, and did you, I should say, believe that, when the very young Mariana was kind of growing up, that she would end up running one of the largest units, 100 billions worth of revenue? That's absolutely huge. And it's not just working across some of the brands that you've worked with and for, it's also, the strategic opportunity that drives for future generations of leaders and for all of the work that you do. Did you think that that was the role that you expected to be in? How did that happen?
Yeah, so for me, I actually pretty early on was very clear about wanting to go into the communications field, public relations in particular. I don't know if it was because I used to come home from school and watch Mike McCurry do his daily press briefing from the White House, or if it was, because I was really into sports and entertainment just as passion points for me. But the notion of public relations, of kind of being in the center of news, pop culture, government, what's happening in the world, that always came very, very naturally to me. And I have to tell you, Layla, I think a lot of this is also who you meet along your journey and who opens their arms to you. And I have just had the absolute best. When I got to DC, there was a woman I worked with, Lorraine Voles, who now serves as chief of staff to Vice President Harris. And she was the one that introduced me to the woman who fundamentally changed my professional life, Jeannie Kiedis, when I came to MTV. And every step of the journey, having strong mentors that helped guide me and continued to instill that confidence that matched my own personal drive, I think is every reason why I'm standing here today. And along the way, probably the most important thing that I've carried with me is it is personal. It's about the people. And that's where you actually gain enjoyment from it. That's where you gain purpose from it. And that's also what helps me now today rationalize the balancing act of being a professional, but also very much being a present mother, which is a struggle I think people still have for very good reason.
You took the words out of my mouth for my next question, and talking about business being personal. We've all heard the expression, it's not personal, it's business. Yet at the same time, how can leaders in the modern world that we live in right now exist without that true authenticity and that purpose and the personality, ability to make people feel they belong? How can they exist without that? Arguably, the one thing.
I would tell you, I don't think it can. And I think that's a very old model that was at a time and place where diversity and inclusion were not top of mind and not priorities. I always do my best when I bring my full self to whatever it is. And that includes my work. It includes my interactions with my colleagues, with my business partners, and most definitely my interactions with my team. They know more about the day-to-day of my life, my children, than they probably want to, but it's all in an attempt to show that I am open, I am here, and we are in this together as one unit. And that, to me, is where you see teams today just be exceptionally high performing. I know there's been a lot out there. Google did a study a while back about the impact of psychological safety on a team. You only forge psychological safety when you yourself open up. And what I will say is that also presents some unique challenges, because sometimes the business wins and the personal doesn't. And that probably in some aspects makes it harder as a people manager. But at the same time, what I can tell you is those relationships can withstand much more thanks to the roots that you've grown together, as opposed to if you really did just have a transactional, it's only business relationship. And by the way, I extend that to our customer segment as well. I don't think businesses today that have highly transactional relationships with customers are the ones winning. I think it's the businesses that are making it feel personal. We know we serve you, we provide a service for you. And that, again, is something that today with Verizon, and especially where we are in our transformation journey, for me, I feel deeply what the brand is trying to do, because that's me as well. Can't ask for more.
I'd love to circle back on something that you mentioned there, and something you mentioned just previously, actually, around the personality within business, and not only the connection of the heart and the mind, but equally how this translates into numbers and greater revenues and profitability as well. Huge amount of data and research which shows that is the case. But I'd also love to come back to the piece you mentioned about the challenges of being a working parent, often, not always, being a working mother who is in a senior executive role, but is balancing two fabulous boys, in your case, with a high profile role when, the team does at times know more than you might like them to when it comes to what is happening behind the scenes. Talk us through a little about that, because I think that's a key piece in the journey to how it then comes into driving revenue and profitability, which we can move.
Absolutely. To kind of start at your last question and work our way back. I think the benefit I have today for where I sit is I am the perfect focus group of one. So two parents in this household, both of us work. We have a 7-year-old going into second grade. I have a 2-year-old who is definitely going through the terrible twos in the sweetest, kindest way possible. And that helps me tremendously every day when I am actually doing the job. I think a lot about what I go through, what my friends go through, the conversations that we're having about technology and how that impacts children today. There's a lot out there right now about the anxious generation. And I believe, as a parent, we have responsibility, obviously, to our families and to our communities. But as a professional right now, I will also tell you, I believe Verizon also has a responsibility, and one that we are going to step up to. And that is pure magic when you're a communications professional and you can actually meld the two together. It's not dissimilar from when I was at MTV. And at that point in time, that brand was literally all about what is next, what is young, what is vibrant, what is new. And for a portion of my career there, I was in the thick of it. I, again, was a focus group of one. But when I got a little older and I was a little bit out of the demo, then it was up to me to seek that out and to make sure that you're living where your customers are so you truly understand them. So that I think is a secret superpower I have right now, and one, quite frankly, that I call upon basically every day as I go about doing my job. If I go back to how I then balance all of that, I mean, look, the bottom line is who you work for really, really matters. And I think especially for working parents who are trying to very much be present in both places, you never do it 100%. It's impossible. So it's essentially a pendulum, and you just kind of, you move the dial to different places where you need to be in that moment in time. But what's really been amazing for me is, as I have come up, especially in my time at Verizon, which is actually, I basically had both children in my tenure here at Verizon, the support and the transparency that I have had with my bosses, and then what they in return offer back to me, has made entirely the difference. So there's a couple people along the way that in particular were super important to me. And that very much was the case when I was trying to get pregnant with my second, and actually ran into a new set of fertility issues that I did not experience the first time around. and basically went to them. It was Tammy Irwin and Jim Gerace and Sam Path, who I still work for today. And all three of them knew exactly what I was intending to do. They knew when I was going in for my egg, retrievals, for my embryo transfers. They knew when I was going on hormones. I mean, it was really a very transparent, open conversation. Part of the mix for me was doing acupuncture. And I remember I sat with Tammy and I said, this is really important. And 2 times a week, I'm going to have to go to acupuncture during the day. And her response to me was, that is absolutely your priority, and we've got your back. And that was just incredible, because then it resulted in this beautiful baby boy, Lucas. And I think for me, I carry that with me, and I try to now pass that on to my teams and to my colleagues. A lot of people think the way to the top is just through your own path. I will tell you that for me, the way to the top has been entirely about how I've worked across. And that unit of support, that unit of not only mentorship, but actually people willing to step in and step up at moments in time where you really need them to, that has meant everything. And at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, I mean, yes, I'm going to sit and remember that we had some amazing launches and we turned Verizon's consumer unit around and that VMAs was the highest rated ever. Sure. But what I'm really going to remember is just the people and how we did it together. And I think that's perspective that I try to carry with me every day. And some days are much harder than others. But that to me is just the crux of why we're here, why we exist, why we want to contribute to society and to our family, and then to our profession as well. So, holistically, there isn't an equal balance, but it all can very much coexist as one if you're bringing your full self to the table all the time.
Mariana, that is so powerful. And it's made me a little emotional, I have to say, listening to you tell that story, because I remember one of the many times that we connected and were even pregnant at the same time when we saw each other in person.
Yes.
The power that you have, not just as a communications professional, but as a human being, is off the Richter scale. Your vulnerability and your openness draws people in, and in the same way it draws leaders, it draws teams in, and not only creating and being bravely candid to share things like the IVF journey and the story and the challenges to get to the top when you're, doing all of that and looking after 2 children and having the hormones and the list goes on. It is that vulnerability that allows others to feel that they are operating in a safe space and a safe place. And to be able to come to you to share how they feel, also to share their journey, and all of these things combined, that is an incredible superpower, a superpower of engagement that also comes out not just in the roots, but in the branches, in the leaves, not only externally with the customers, coming right back to where we started, but also when it comes to engaging teams, because disengaged teams are proven to have far lower productivity, therefore revenue, therefore churn, staff turnover, etc., etc.
Yeah.
The famous expression goes is people don't leave companies, much as they may love brands. They leave leaders or bosses that they have worked with. And, the reverse is entirely true. You mentioned people like Tammy Irwin, which is how we first met. These are leaders that speak so highly of you, that are the connections and the glue that bind us together. Because as you articulately said, when we zoom out and get that perspective and we look at our lives, when we are in our rocking chairs, what are the moments that matter? The moments where people have, like you've said, had your back, others' backs. And that's where, true magic and moments that matter really happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I will also say I've had many men who have also shown me their strive for balance. When I was at MTV in particular, Van Toffler, who at the time was president of the MTV Music Group, he often talked to me about how he tried to manage being present for his children, along with being an executive overseeing at the time probably four of the biggest pop culture brands in the world. And that had profound impact on me. I think about Guru Gowrappan, who was my CEO at Verizon Media, and I always carry with me his notion of go back to first principles, Mariana. Go back to the things that matter most, both for yourself and for the business. That was his mantra, and that is a mantra I carry with me to today. And then, on that note, I am still very, very lucky to be working with Sampath, the CEO of the consumer unit right now, who literally, as much as we sit and talk about work and the importance of the customer and what we're doing and how we want to transform, in the same breath will turn to me and say, okay, now you need to go spend time with your children, and I don't want to hear from you again until Monday. And that, again, just having people who have those shared values around you and are willing to be in it with you makes all the difference in the world in terms of your productivity and your business, but also, again, just in terms of the overall value of your life. And I feel very, very blessed to have such amazing people in and around me throughout my entire career.
Before we go into our lightning round, which I'm rather excited about, and I'll give you maybe I'll give you maybe 30 seconds to a minute to answer each of the questions. I'd love just to touch base on the economic impact, because, a lot of the amazing work that you do, Mariana, is advising others. It's also advising organizations on their strategy in line with what's happening in the world. And, frankly, the geopolitical craziness that we have had of late, I think 70 elections around the globe before we had our UK election, all these things all happening, it becomes more important that we're actually supporting a diverse range of people and executives in the workforce. And so where you were talking about how you told leaders, Sampath and others, when you were having your IVF and when you needed to go in for hormone treatment, it makes me think about all of the talent that is lost because organizations aren't giving senior execs, women and or men or parents, however we identify, that time to be flexible. I read an article the other day, I think it was perhaps Fast Company or Forbes, but was talking about how critical mums and parents are to the US economy. But in this situation, in this article, I should say, it was saying that mums have a lot it's economic gain from women's labor force participation being around 2 trillion. And that was, late 1970s to early 2000s. And I thought, oh my goodness, this amount of money to the bottom lines of organizations, if actually there was more flexibility, which would equally allow more senior women like yourself to get to where they are because of flexibility, wouldn't that have the most profound economic impact that we could imagine?
I would tell you, I think it will have an impact on everything.
Mm-hmm.
Women, I have an amazing husband who also has a very big job, and he is a constant support to me. But I am the one who just went and purchased all the new clothes for the kids' upcoming school year. There are certain responsibilities that I think I want as the mother. Quite frankly, I don't think he throws them on me. I think I want them. That a lot of the spending decisions in this household do come from me. And I think a lot of families are in similar positions, not all, but a lot. At the end of the day, though, I kind of go back to, again, if you're going to be successful in business, you have to be a focus group of one, or you have to seek out your focus groups for what you're doing. Like if I think about Verizon right now and everything happening in the world, I will tell you that I prioritize that bill over basically everything else that we have in our household, because the fact that my son has his Gizmo watch on, and yes, I'm turning into a little bit of a commercial, but that's what good PR people do. He has a fabulous Gizmo watch on his wrist, and I can get in touch with him. I can track him. I know where he is. That is very valuable to me. The fact that I can FaceTime my parents whenever I need to, or they can reach out to me right away. I need that in my life. The fact that I can have work flexibility to be connected at home as much as I am in the office or while on the road, I need that connectivity. And it's so much more than just the brass tacks connectivity. Families want to be connected to the things in life that matter to them. And that's the service we provide as Verizon. So now you can actually see how holistically you're talking about a better customer value prop. You're talking about better advertising, creative, and execution tactics. And you're talking about actually reaching your customers exactly where they are and with what they need. That is a recipe for success. The other piece to this that I will say, and I think a unique role that brands can play in people's lives are, there is a lot going on right now, and there's a lot that's very unsettling right now. Sampath and I talk about this very regularly. It comes down to joy. Can we bring joy to someone's life? And can we make it easy for them? That is how you get a customer for life. And the world needs that, I believe, right now more than ever. And yes, I'm an optimist, and I am a glass is always half full and a Pollyanna, and I've been called all of those things. But quite frankly, I wouldn't have it any other way.
As always, you've articulated that perfectly. And the long-term sustainable prosperity, not only of people, customers, planet, purpose, all critical for us to be able to operate, both as CEOs of our homes, CEOs within organizations, and as real true activists, which is a lot of what I've been writing about recently. And, again, super appreciate you giving your take in the book, because that is what it's about. Where are we looking to the future? How do we maintain a relationship with customers and with people that we work with that goes beyond the pure surface level and the performative?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is literally why life is worth living.
Indeed. So moving into the lightning round.
Okay, I'm ready.
I feel like I should do an evil laugh before we start. But anyway, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to a minute to answer each question. And, I'm going to start with the hardest one first. And I think for someone like yourself who is super modest, it's actually a really difficult question. Are you ready?
Go for it.
How would you define success?
There is certainly business success, which is in the numbers and the thing that all professionals should look at first and foremost. But I think there's also success with what you do for people and your customers.
And what is success to you personally?
Success to me personally means that I have found purpose, joy, and usually really big results out of an initiative or a project.
And joy is something that feeds through everything I've noticed since the beginning of our conversation, but also the conversations we've had in the past. I totally
Absolutely.
agree.
Absolutely. Even if it's a crisis response situation, which can get very intense, you almost still find joy in being in it with your colleagues. You're in the foxhole together, and there is great joy in that as well.
Exactly. And how about the people that have inspired you most throughout your life or even your career? I know a number you've mentioned, but who have been those inspirations along the journey?
When I was at MTV, Judy McGrath was running MTV Networks. And I think as a woman, as a mother, she is someone that we all looked up to. And as someone who has continued to make her impact on society, I'd certainly put her on that list. And I think for me, because family is so important, it really is, it's my parents and my siblings. I find great strength in them. I find great lessons from them, and they are my rock and my support, along with my husband.
We have some very powerful men and women around you, and having spoken about the fabulousness of the Greek and American culture and the smorgasbord of all of that, that does not surprise me. What about any of your favorite books or even podcasts that you've been listening to? I know that you are a fan of the pop cultural zeitgeist amongst many things, and a person that's always looking to various trends and the latest happenings. But what are you really enjoying at the moment? Or if Mariana's on holiday, what book or podcast has she got with her?
Well, you're gonna laugh because this will speak to you. At this point, I'm reading a lot of 2-year-old books every single night with my son. And what's been really fun about that is there are these great lessons in them about life and friendship and partnership. And so, again, for me, I am really careful about how I spend my time. And I do read a lot. And podcast for me, I sometimes get into and sometimes not. I often find actually it's too distracting with the kids around for me to really focus on them. So, what I'm reading right now, though, is The Anxious Generation, which is a book that is very much speaking to me both as a consumer and as a professional in my day job right now. We're endeavoring to do some pretty deep research on digital safety and the tools and technologies that parents need, not only for their children, by the way, but also just to help manage elderly parents, pets, the household, et cetera. And so that's an area I'm looking to go very deep on right now.
It's fascinating because the early intervention that can happen through the consumption of education and information, even for 2-3-year-olds, it is incredible. Those formative years are those years where a lot of life's learning comes from.
Absolutely.
And finally, if you could go back in time, often called the rocking chair test, but let's say Mariana is looking back upon her life and giving advice to the very young Mariana who, in true Mariana fashion, knows what she wants to do and is very interested in, say, comms and people. Is there any advice that you would give your younger self, or indeed someone who is about to embark on a similar journey and would love to be where you are today?
I would say remember that everything is just a moment in time. We tend to get very bogged down by something that is occurring in the moment, whether it's in regards to your career trajectory or your personal life. And, when I was in my 20s, am I going to find someone to love and be a partner for the rest of my life? And then it turned into children, which was interesting for me because the first one happened pretty easy and the second one was a completely different experience. It's all a moment in time. And if you just keep yourself grounded in what's important to you, you're the one in control of your destiny and your future. No one else is. So it's really finding that inner confidence and leaning on that most when you're in a moment of uncertainty, for sure.
Mariana, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. Not only do I love speaking with you outside of podcasts and hearing about the great things that you're doing and making positive change, but everything that you've said really resonated with me personally. And I know that it'll resonate with so many people who are listening in from around the world.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me today.
Mariana, the pleasure has been mine. And I'm thinking, how do I summarize what has been such a rich and fruitful podcast? What I will say is some of the key things that have really stood out are the power of communications in long-term sustainable business strategy, the power of people and how great leaders who are like Mariana vulnerable or authentic, how they support high performance and engagement, but also why diversity, inclusion, belonging, equity, and culture are absolutely critical to customer success. Because if we can share a little around our personal selves and not only make people's lives somewhat easier by education and technology, which is something that I know has been touched on a lot today, then not only will the world be a far better place, but actually we are leaving an incredible legacy for future generations of leaders. And the final piece which resonates with me so pertinently, it's not only the Greek and American side of things, but also the IVF and the power of parenthood and that journey into itself, because I know firsthand that it takes real tenacity and emotional resilience and strength. And resilience is a trait that is really underrated in today's modern world, which is, as you said, super uncertain at times. And what we want as human beings is that stability and the knowledge that things are going to be okay.
Exactly, Layla. And I think what's great is we can all have an impact on our micro communities and then also at the macro level as well.
My name is Layla Mackenzie Dallas, founder and CEO of Dial Global. And today you've been listening to the Diverse and Inclusive Leaders podcast with the fantastic Mariana Agathoklis Schlock of Verizon. If you've been affected by any of the discussion in today's show, please don't hesitate to reach out. We'd love it if you would subscribe. So please do find us on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. And if you'd like to watch on YouTube because you cannot listen to the podcast, that's equally fine. Everything else will also be in the show notes at the end of today's show. You can visit us directly at www.dialglobal.org/podcast. And I'll look forward to seeing you again very soon.